issues, 19.84. At this point, present are Commissioner Dommerhausen and Commissioner Huth. We have additional people available for information. So I'm going to call it to order. We're going to have a health and safety message. I wish I would see fewer people running around to do things and take their time, because you can run into and snag yourself on something. But one of the other things that I really, really get upset on is sitting at a stop sign and the light's changed, and it's changed, and it's changed, and it's changed. So it makes me honk the horn, and they're boom, while they put their phone down. So again, that message, don't use your phone when you drive. And that, pull over, talk about it, don't inconvenience others, and don't cause road rage. So thank you. Finance. We're very fortunate to have here a couple of nice people. Ron Garrison, Jennifer Everhart from UNESCO, if I have that correct. And they're going to make a presentation to us, and this was brought forward by, forgive me, Dave, and who's your compadre? I forget that. Bill?
Bill Samborski.
Yeah, Samborski. I didn't. I sat in on the meeting. I felt it was very worthwhile. They didn't need my permission or anyone else's, because they're doing what we're asking them to do, find ways to save money. And that, so I'd like to welcome them, and you have the use of the podium.
Thank you.
And whatever handouts you have, and we'll all be grateful to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. My able assistant here will get you guys the handouts. Go ahead. I'll move over here, and I'm going to set these down. I'm just going to kind of talk through this packet very quickly.
Okay.
If that's okay. Do I need to be here? Or am I okay roaming around? Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. Perfect.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys get your hands on the packets, and then I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights from the packet, and then if you have any questions, and I know you guys got a lot going on and very busy with the start of school and everything. As Carl mentioned, we had a meeting 3 weeks or so ago to talk about some energy type projects, and we're actually moving forward with several different things, and I'll talk about that as we get going. So just real quick on the packet here, the first couple of pages, it just talks about why we're here, what we're doing, and there's kind of a very wordy slide there. But basically, there's been a lot of technology improvements. There's been a lot of cost changes that even if you've done some recent type projects, there are still some things where we can find some things that's going to save you some money, and that's all we're kind of talking about for the first part of it. So what we're going to look at, if you kind of look at this slide with the matrix type thing, we're going to look at all of those areas. The ones that are highlighted in green there are the ones that have some probably a very specific energy type component to them with energy savings. So we're going to emphasize those items because those will help pay for other projects. But we're going to take a close look at everything that's listed on that matrix. So what's the deliverable going to look like? Well, basically, maybe Jennifer, I'm going to have Jennifer pass out. What I have here is 3 different prelims of other school districts that we've done. So those are, again, just samples. They're different. But in essence, that's what we will come back to the district with, is a packet like that. We're going to do a sampling of some of your buildings. Obviously, you have 18 buildings, so there's a lot there. But we're going to be doing a study and putting together, we like to call it kind of the yearbook. And what's going to be included in there is a couple of different things. One thing that's going to be included is a utility analysis. So we're going to list all of your buildings. We're going to calculate a utility cost per square foot for all of those buildings. And then that will tell us if there's room for savings. The Wisconsin state average on the utility cost per square foot is about $1.02. I did a little bit of a back of the envelope looking at your budget numbers and looking at your square footages. I think you're more in the about 15 or so range, which given the size of the district, that's great. But that does tell us that there's room. We know we can bring you under $1 utility cost per square foot. And that's what the utility analysis that will be part of those books will do. The other thing, then we will also take you to a more specific, what we call facility improvement measures. So now we'll start quantifying how we're going to take you from that $1.15 or so down below there, which ones would do that. And so that's what we call FIMS, facility improvement measures. We will also put together, it's called a rough order of magnitude. So then we'll actually kind of quantify the dollars for those. So we'll look at, if you did this project, what would be your savings, both from a utility perspective and from an operational savings? What would it cost to do it as an estimate? And what does then the return on investment look like? We will also put together from the deliverables a bit of a cash flow. How would you pay for it? We do three things. We help identify, fund, and implement facility optimization projects. The identification's collaborative with Dave and with what our engineers are going to see, but the hard part is always the funding. If we can't figure out a way to pay for these projects, then this just becomes a study that sits on your shelf, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for things that will help improve overall. The next thing, we will also look at doing some surveys, if it's appropriate with you guys, and I have samples of the surveys here. We do a kind of a comfort survey of your staff, if you'd like us to do that, and there's a list of the questions there. And then we also do a needs assessment of either the staff or the board members and the like. So those are things that we can put together. Some of those results of those surveys are in the books that I showed you, but that is something else that is part of our deliverables. And then the final part of the deliverable is we're going to look at the age of your equipment and how does that stack up to what's the expected life. I like to say that everybody kicks the can down the road. It's a question of how far down the road are you going to kick it. So we can help develop maybe not only today's needs, but a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year type plan. So that's what the deliverables will be. If you go into the section that talks about responsibilities, pretty much we're doing everything. All we really need from you, and one thing we've already gotten from Dave, is a utility release. So we're pulling your actual utility data from utility company. We do still need to get your gas numbers, Keith, because the gas is purchased from a futures perspective. So Jennifer will work with you on that one. We're going to be going through your buildings. We're actually have this scheduled to be done next week. We picked 4 or 5 buildings that we're going to be focusing on initially. And we did that in collaboration with Dave. And then we'll put that together in order to develop those books. And then the last thing, I'm going to skip over the why UNESCO part. You'll see, but though the very last page is your goals, which you have up on the board. And we believe with a lot of the things that we can work on, the 4 different goals there that I have starred, we think we can have a very, very significant impact on. We believe we can hit the quality, because we're going to improve some of the learning environment. We think we're going to affect the people, because we're going to take some of the survey results and put some things together for what the people are looking for from your staff. Absolutely going to affect finances, because we're going to lower your operating costs. Generally, we can drop between 20 to 30% of your utility cost by doing this type of study. And a lot of times that helps with the growth. You find that you're putting some money in the facilities, more kids want to come here. So that's my spiel. I hope I did good with the time frame. What questions do you have?
Ding. I would mention, though, this is very similar to what we did with Focus on Energy a few years ago, and at that time Jennifer was with Focus on Energy, so we are retaining her experience and her familiarity with the district when she comes in here, so that's going to be very helpful. And again, this is the kind of thing, they will make some recommendations. Obviously, we will bring that to the board, because savings always cost money, but it's a good item to get going. It's something you just don't have the time or the expertise to do on our internal staff, and we're looking forward to making some good gains, and they are going to be very responsive too, and we won't have to wait 8 months or 12 months for a report like we had to on Focus on Energy. They just were so underfunded that after a while they weren't going to be able to come anyway. So we're excited about this, ready to get this started, and we think it should give us some good results.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm assuming you don't work for free.
Correct. We are not a nonprofit. That is correct.
So we pay you as a consulting fee, it's a percentage of savings, a combination, or how do you earn your money?
Yeah. As I mentioned, we do 3 things. We help identify, fund, and then implement the projects. So we would, if you identify certain projects that you want to get done, we would play the general contractor, just like you would if you were hiring a general contractor, and then our fees are built into managing those projects. So we don't get anything if we don't go forward with some projects, if we can't prove our case that you're interested in. There's no charge for the study. There's no charge for us to develop this and lay this out. It's only a question if we can build the case to find projects that are really going to be energy efficiency for you, then by managing those projects is how we get paid.
So this is again, replacing windows, better insulation, or all the things you think about with saving energy. It's not user habit driven per se, to teach people how to turn off the lights or those kind of things, but it's installing switch that go off automatically instead, or those.
Right. We're required to guarantee the savings. This is kind of under there's a statute within the state legislation called performance contracting, so we guarantee the savings. So behavior-based is not what we were involved with.
Okay.
We're going to automate. We're going to put better technology and better controls. It's going to automate that so that we can actually guarantee those savings. We're going to probably, LED lighting, I kind of mentioned in the presentation, has come down significantly, and there's significant savings there. We're going to add controls. We're going to put CO2 sensors. You may be cooling a gym as if there's 500 people there, but if there's only 2 people in there, we want to ratchet that down, use variable speed drives, replace pneumatics, those types of things that we can add more controls to it and add technology that's going to make everything more efficient.
In your industry, what is the over-under for a number of years of payback we normally you'd recommend going forward versus not?
The state statute lets you do 20 years. Most people will do 10 to 15 years as a payback, and that's part of the criteria that we'll evaluate. And if you tell me what's palatable in your area, 12 years, then that's what we're going to calculate. Now, in some cases, when you combine projects, you may find a project that's got a 5-year payback and something else that's got a 17-year payback, but together they may have a 10-year payback. So sometimes you can leverage the shorter term payback to help pay for other items that either have a longer term or maybe no payback. So in some cases we've done this to help security, parking lots, or things that have no payback, but if we can leverage some of those savings to help pay for that, then that's an advantage, and that's what a lot of districts look at.
Very well done booklet, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Steve?
So Keith, could you share how this aligns then with the 10-year capital improvement plan? With the work that they would do, would they help us prioritize based on what they find?
Yes, with our 10-year capital improvement plan, one of the sections, if you recall, was breaking out the items in the plan by school. And we're focusing on the school, and obviously the things we hit will be things that are on the 10-year capital plan.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, obviously, we want to look at that because we know those are areas that are important to you, and if we can incorporate those in the plan, great. That would be part of the bigger picture. But we'll come back with a whole list of things above and beyond the plan, and then try to be able to tell you, okay, here's what these are going to save, here's what it would look like.
And then I would expect you to also tell us if maybe our priorities could be realigned based on the things you find that generate more cost savings quicker.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Dave, you have anything to add?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I thank you for bringing them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Karen, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
No questions, okay. Our superintendent, of course.
Hi.
So, okay, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time to come, and I think kind of excite people a little bit. Pass it down. Did you, no, we'll get it to Claire.
Eventually.
Eventually, huh?
If you want to, I'm sure I'll be back. If you want to look at them,
Greg.
cycle them back to Dave. We'll be here, on and off over the next several weeks. So if you
Okay.
want to take a good look at them, again, remember, those are 3 different districts, but that'll give you a feel for the format and kind of the information that we will put together.
Okay.
That's that. We'll put item 4 on the agenda, and this is Mr. Pennington.
All right, this is the first month at the Finance Committee meeting because we usually don't pass out July financials, but this is our financial package for August, the general summation of our income statement and a balance sheet. You can see on the left-hand side of the statements, we do not have budget numbers in. That's historically the way we do it until a budget is actually passed. But just a quick review of what has happened, a very quick review. There are really no surprises. Any changes in expenses at this point of the year are basically due to timing, where we may have purchased more software this year than last year, more hardware, had a different combination of capital improvements and so on. Nothing notable on here to get excited about. You can see the fund balance graph. We started right about the same amount we started at in July and dropped a little bit in August. It continues the same path, just different numbers. We're a little lower than we were at the end of last year, which was the same as before, because we did use some of our fund balance last year when we pulled some of the reserve for the self-insurance. The last page of the packet was requested by Commissioner Domerhausen, and this is a balance sheet that shows the balance sheet of August 31st, 2015 compared to August 2014. Again, you can see some changes in the balances, but nothing that is really unusual or unpredictable. Remember, the balance sheet is just a snapshot as of a specific day, in this case August 31st. These numbers could change dramatically any day after that. It just gives you a full picture of balance sheet and income statement for the financials. Again, nothing major, nothing unexpected noted, and I would ask that these get taken to the board for approval.
Okay. Do we have a motion as such? Okay.
Second.
Bill made the motion. Steve seconded. So is there any more discussion? Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes 3-0. Okay. Next one, Keith, you're up again.
All right. As an update for our 15-16 budget, we do have some changes from the prior presentation, which would have been at last week's board meeting. I've just abbreviated what I've passed out to pages 5 through 7 of the presentation, or maybe there's another page, 5 through 8 maybe. There's a big change is due to the fact that we have completed our wages spreadsheet that takes a long time to prepare. And what we found out was basically that even though there's a 2% raise figured in for everybody, our wages are fairly close to break even with what they were last year. So if you recall, at the last meeting, the additional expenses, we added the $1,320,000 for the 2% increase. This meeting, I'm taking the $1,320,000 out on the cuts. So what that does is that leaves us right now, before additional changes, which still might occur, and there'll be some things we'll talk about today, as a matter of fact, we do have a positive swing of about $1,300,000 from the gains versus the losses. If you turn the page, this is kind of a precursor to what will be talked about in just a few minutes. The two major plans that were presented but not yet voted on by the board, Capital Improvement Plan and the IT Capital Plan. I will give a brief summary of these before we dive into those. Those have not changed. And then at the end, the additional open items that still remain, the 5-year forecast will be talked about today. Our departmental building and program budgets are virtually completed. They're very close to be completed, and right now we're not going to have a major change from last year to this year, especially since there's a gain right now. Net open enrollment, that one we usually don't find out, as I spoke at the other meeting, until October. That could make the difference at $200,000 or $300,000 either way. Jeep will be finalized soon, and there's also some work to be done with special education and the MOE amounts as well. That's always the last and always the hardest budget to complete, because we have to balance between what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. Though we're working on that as we speak again. For a reminder, we will have a budget book ready by the first meeting in October. That's the 90-page book that we pass out with the detail that everybody looks at. Then we have time to come back before the next meeting, usually a finance committee in between. We're probably going to have to cut off everything at the end of this week to begin processing that book, because it takes quite a bit of time to do that. So we're moving along. We've got a gain that's a little more positive than it was the last time I presented, and we still have some major items to discuss, 3 of which will be discussed today.
Any questions, Bill?
it seems in my decades of service that every year we end up with a surplus on part of these things. I'm guessing because of attrition where someone retires, they're not replaced right away, or their replacement is a new, younger person who might have less salary schedule. So I'm not sure in the past we were as detailed. We actually went through everybody's, in a sense, pay stub. I mean, I'm saying it a different way, the salary schedule. But that's what this is a result of, correct? You actually went through every employee, what they're going to be getting, FICA benefits, a whole bit, not just simply numbers averaged out.
Correct. It's a spreadsheet that has every single position. And if there's an open position, it's just instead of saying Steve Huth, it says open position with an estimated amount.
And again, if during the year, if Dr. Steve retires at $80,000 a year and replaced with apprentice Bill at $40,000 a year, that'll still have an effect next year, but you can't plan on knowing that because so far Steve hasn't said he's retiring yet
Correct.
that year. Okay.
Yeah, we go by what is actual or what is open.
Okay. And the rough amount of money that we have for the current tax levy to quote get to the max was also about 1.2 or so, or what was that number, give or take?
You mean the amount over what we had last year?
Amount that we're currently under, I mean, our latest guess, you wanna know what the numbers? till
Our
October?
property tax limit, if we fully utilize the entire amount, would be 1.25 million higher than what it was last
Right, so
year.
about,
But our aid is also 1.1 million lower.
right,
So
so,
it balances out.
okay, it just seems that the 1.2 to 3 number is like used for everything.
Yeah. 1.5 is used quite frequently too,
Okay, all right,
so
so,
it gets confusing.
so another way of looking at it is we could maintain a current, we could put on these things as well, or other changes. Or the board could say, you know what, we're gonna hold the line on local taxes, and we'd be at that point break even as well.
If everything ended as
Same,
presented.
correct, thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Keith, when you talk about the final department building and program budget, it's my understanding that staff were asked, and buildings were asked, and programs were asked to reduce their budgets by a significant amount in preparation.
The initial amount was 20%, yes.
Okay, so does that mean this brings them back to whole, back to zero? So they'd be the same
This
as
is,
the
this is
past
with
year?
the assumption that they are brought back to whole, yes.
Okay, so they wouldn't realize the 20% reduction in the building?
Based on the
Necessarily.
assumptions we're going with now, yes.
Okay, and were we able to, in the past years, bring them back to whole? In other words, did people have to reduce building budgets over the last 5 years?
Many have due to the situations, you know, the year we had to cut $10 million.
Right.
Obviously, the buildings and the departmentals did. So it's based on, you know, the situation of the finances at the time.
Okay.
So it has gone up and down and break even.
So these numbers that you share would not include those cuts?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So if I can just make sure that I'm comfortable with this, you're saying the 2% increase in wages for staff was 1,320, but we also found that by the changes in staff, is this correct? It was offsetting.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that puts us that we have this at this point, 1.3 mil.
Yes.
Okay. But we still have a few more things to go,
Right.
and that, several of them here. So who knows where that's going to be,
This is just where we are right now.
of known items. Yeah, not the unknown, okay.
Correct.
And like Steve said, that allows schools to maintain the budget they had last year. That sounds good to me.
I'm not sure they even know that yet, but.
I think some of them just
Yeah.
found out.
Hello, principals.
Wait, let's just get more money.
Yeah.
Nice to hear good news.
Yeah, we'll take that,
Yeah.
absolutely.
'Cause we have been cutting back at the schools almost every year, significantly one year. So it's a delight to hear that we're not asking to take another fingernail off. So, thank you. Sorry. Okay, we just need a discussion on that one, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that'll go on. Okay. The next part,
Carl?
key,
But before we move on, I am curious, though, and not right now, but I am curious, if we look back 3 years, because people did have to make cuts over the past 3 or 4 years. I want to make sure that the new level we're looking at isn't less than, I'd like some comparable information, comparables from a few years ago. Buildings really did suffer with less resources for their students per student. And it would be good for us to look at that and not assume we're just going to say, well, last year they had enough and they got by, so let's get by again this next year.
Okay.
If there are specific things that they had to do without for the kids.
Steve, if it isn't too much, I kind of like the idea. I've kind of asked for a baseline of about 2010, 11 type of thing.
Sure.
Because that's when we've had some kind of changes there, and that I'm also asking that on tax rates and that, how it affected. There's been a lot positive and some other issues that aren't quite as nice.
Does that make sense?
So,
I mean,
Does
there
that make
will
s-
be, I forget when Act 10 happened, but, you know, that will be
Sure,
the year there
sure.
was huge decreases.
yeah, well, we need to know those things that we've done. Some of it was necessary or needed, and some of it maybe otherwise. It's sometimes personal, sometimes I don't want to get into that. Okay, we're going to look at the capital improvement, and Mr. Pennington and Dave, Mr. Leader.
We've already given the presentation, as you recall. That's the same for this and for the IT that'll follow up. But it was brought up that it might be a good time to bring back to the Finance Committee. And just, again, in summary, and this was on page 2 of the handout of the projected budget for 15-16, for the capital improvement plan, we went through the details and requested $1,603,024, which included all the must-haves, all the priority ones, all the priority twos, and most of the safety items. And that million, we did get 745 of that approved as the early items to fix the roofs and the parking lots and the other items that had to get done in the summer. So the request that was made back in April was for $1,603,000, which was actually $19,000 less than what had been requested and approved the year before. So now we've been asked by Commissioner Damerhausen to bring that back up because we're running out of time to make decisions on these things, and it might be a good time to bring back up to see what the board determines to be a proper budget for capital improvements.
Okay. You recall I had asked that we obviously must-dos, safety items, and those items that might have repercussions beyond it. So I thought must-haves 1 and 2 were necessities. 3, there were some items, but I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, there's nothing there. So anyone, now, I'll open up the floor to everyone that wants to say something. Bill? You're okay? At this point, is there any comments or anything you're thinking?
Well, obviously, it's part of the entire discussion of the final budget, so
I have nothing to say now.
Thank you. Steve?
You're not requesting any action, this is just an update.
Well,
They are.
we've already requested the budget of $1,603,000, so.
And that,
And
we
the
just
board-
need a
the board put it on
recommendation
hold.
to Pat. We never brought that up before.
Correct.
Okay, and I have I'll ask one more question. On this, we have a savings of 19,000. That isn't into the bottom line yet, is it, on the previous page?
No, because nothing was
Okay,
approved yet.
okay, and I compliment Dave, you've done a wonderful job trying to do this and prioritize it and that. I know there's a lot more needed down the road. We just can't do it at the moment, and we'll work on that. So,
So I do have a question. So you're asking for the difference, which is, what, 858,000? We are already approved 745,000.
Correct.
So you're asking for about 858,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that amount would be out of what you're assuming will be the revenue we have available, which is 1.3 million approximately.
Yeah, again, if this were approved at the total of 1.603, that would not affect your number. in front of you, except it would add $19,000 to it.
So that would not impact the 1.3?
Well, it would add 19,000 since this is 19,000 less than what we spent last year.
I need to get to a meeting.
Pardon?
I need a date. I gotta leave.
You want to make a motion on this and we'll get it passed, forwarded, is a recommendation?
This is a motion to approve this dollar amount, or is this a motion to,
As presented, to approve the budget as presented for capital
okay.
improvements.
I have no problem in approving the amount that we had, that was they originally asked for, but I would be opposed to voting on it finally until the final budget is done, because there might be some things we want to do yet with that money. I mean, we have possible lower tax levy. It could be capital improvements, IT improvements. It could be a lot of things we would do with that. And so I'd like to look at other possibilities, that if there's a plan that if we do it now, it makes more sense above the 1.6, I'll consider that. So I have no problem going at least this amount, but I wouldn't want to make the motion to pass that as a final decision to the board
Recommendation.
ahead of the October meeting, which I'll miss anyway, but, so I'm okay with passing this recommendation now, but understanding that, I think we should at least consider if we had to add to it, if there was a need that made sense financially to do so.
Okay, so that's your recommendation that we.
Are there any of these things time sensitive between now and October?
Probably,
Is there anything that
we have a
if we
couple
don't approve
things.
it?
There's a
Next
couple of
week?
compliance-related
Yeah.
things, such as our preventive boiler maintenance and our pneumatic control preventive maintenance, as well as bleacher inspection.
Okay.
So I will move that we, for now, at least approve the amount we budgeted preliminary, the
1.6,
yes.
and I'll second that.
It's
1.603.
actually a recommendation to go forward for the board to do it.
Right.
We have no approval authority,
Correct.
just a recommendation. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Nay? Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Good luck. Now okay, no, wait a minute. Okay, now we're on the IT budget, I'm sorry.
Right, and that is the same situation, the same page on our schedule. IT capital budget had a plan of $1.4 million. There wasn't a specific amount requested, and the amount that was spent last year was $800,000. So at this time, we were going to bring this back up for discussion. Dr. Smiley is here with some of the details. Some of the details were also sent along with your packet to either come up with a good number or have discussion, or to see whether or not you want to recommend it to the full board for full discussion again. Again, the presentations have been made, the details have been passed out, and it's just been on hold as an unapproved budget change. So it's basically the same item, same type of item as
Right.
capital improvements were.
So my point here, and you can, Dr. Smiley, you can answer it. You really are saying $922,228.01 for this year is the desired amount. I'm going from your sheets. You're taking a long-range technology, hardware planning, and budgeting, and I see that. You haven't asked for it formally. I just happened to see that, though.
Commissioner Domershausen, the memo that was shared with the board is that we need $721,000 for existing equipment. The memo that was shared with the board, there was a request for additional devices above and beyond that budget for items for equity. And then beyond that, we were expanding access at the high schools, Van Buren, and in PE, 612.
So what's the dollar total you're requesting?
1.4 million overall. Last year's budget was 800,300. So we're looking at an expansion of about $600,000. That was the memo those were the original numbers that were shared with the board.
Okay.
So over and above the 2014-15 budget, it's $600,209 or some such number. Now, part of that is that we were able to purchase 94 Chromebooks for Van Buren out of 1415's funds. So that request is actually lowered by $47,000 because we've already satisfied a portion of that original request.
Okay. So you're making an argument, a discussion. I don't want to say argument because
I'm
I don't
making a
mean that there is one.
presentation for
But
additional
you're asking
funding.
1.4.
Yes, of which 800,300 was in last year's budget.
Right. So you're asking an increase of $600,209.
Correct.
Okay. Questions, Steve?
Keith, is that factored into the, that's not factored into your front page at all,
No.
right?
Correct.
But the 800,300 would be factored into your front page.
Correct.
I don't think we have the correct memo, Dr. Smiley, in our board packet. It doesn't have a summary that way. The one we have is dated March 20th, 2015. Does that sound right?
I'm sorry, I didn't see I didn't review
That's
what was in
okay.
the packet.
I'm just letting you know that, so when we move this to the full board, I don't think we have the right. We have the 30-year plan, and,
That's correct.
yeah, we have the 30-year budget projections, so we don't have the detail that you just explained.
Okay, so as part of that presentation, if you remember, we talked, I'll describe them as buckets.
Sure, I
We had
remember.
The replacement bucket, the equity bucket, and the bucket for some
Right.
expansion items, all of which were related to curriculum and instruction.
Sure. Well, my recommendation would be that we move forward to the full board, the $800,300, to align with what Bill had just suggested, which is, Commissioner Soderman had suggested, which is we would address the additional amount during the budget discussions when we get to the final piece. And that would allow you to purchase things in the next 45 days. The final budget will be decided in October, which would be helpful. So that'd be my recommendation, with the two of us.
Well, with
still
only
there.
two of us, pretty hard to make anything other than to pass it on to the board.
I can move and second it. No, I can. Just kidding.
Well, I could second it. That's the problem, though. But it's only two of us.
But that would be we can make that recommendation to the
yeah,
full board.
and that's what I would do.
Okay?
I think he said. Did you get what he said? 800,000 is we're comfortable
800
with, and
800,000,
we'll
300.
let the board make the decision on the additional amounts,
Right.
and more information will come forward, as Bill said, and that. So, appears we might even have some money. That's where we stand. We'll just move it forward with that recommendation.
Okay.
Next. Oh, Dr. Schulte, you are up.
Thank you. I'll pass these over
Okay.
to you.
Just one sheet, right?
One sheet, yeah. If you would take.
I saw the pile and I was wondering.
Just one sheet this time.
Are you saving on staples?
Yes, we are, and paper. So this is year 4 of our 5-year forecast. We began this process in 12-13 after some of the larger budget reductions that you were talking about earlier, and actually moved on this in 13-14. So here are some of the things that we think are of the utmost priority in the district at this time. First of all, as we have talked as a cabinet and spoken with our principals, we believe the positions of academic learning coaches are critical to the success of our schools. We have just a couple schools left. Some of them are represented here tonight, I see. Roosevelt and Jefferson, Van Buren, and Lincoln that continue to share one academic learning coach between 2 buildings. They've made it work, but I am hoping that we'll be able to put one academic learning coach into each building for a total of 4, meaning we would need 2 more full-time staff. You'll see the dollars that we've estimated there next to that, those 2 amounts. And then the second thing are in the area of student services. We have a number of positions also that were reduced. And so again, looking at how we can at least have one student services person in buildings full-time. Harrison and Kennedy, I think, is the last building that has a guidance counselor shared between two buildings. And prior to that, we had a guidance counselor in every elementary building. So we felt like that is the best approach in our elementary schools, to have somebody there to respond to the numerous needs, emotional, social kinds of issues that come up in our elementary schools. And so again, it would be to add one guidance counselor full-time in each of those elementary schools. And then the second part of that, our charter schools oftentimes gets what is left over. And we have 4 charter schools with upwards of 300 students, and we would like to add 1 full-time student services specialist to work with all 4 of those charter schools. So those are positions that we would be bringing back. In your board packet that you'll receive on Friday, you will see all the years. We'll lay all of the years out for you so you can see what has already been spent and what positions have been added back. Then on the same page, you will see 2 additional positions that we also think are very important to running our school district. One is the Secretary Student Services position, actually it would be HR Student Services, regarding ACA, Affordable Care Act, and all the duties that come with that. And Dr. Sperry, would you like to speak about that?
Yes, thank you. Never in our wildest dreams would we have ever been able to predict or estimate the responsibilities and compliance with ACA. We have been monitoring that. We're looking at merging that with another half-time position in my department. I've been monitoring that for about 3 years with the workload. Specifically with ACA, it's day-to-day tracking of all of our new hires, making sure that that people are not going over the amount of hours prior to them receiving insurance. In addition, it's compiling monthly information on every employee within the district here, timesheets, coaching responsibilities, coaching duties. All this information needs to be uploaded into Skyward. And then it's basically the overall compliance, and we've estimated 20 hours a week that would be needed for this. And again, we've been trying to monitor what this might be required. In addition, I'm looking at about another 20 hours with some of the other responsibilities. And that may be things such as tuition waivers, infinite campus work, our parent-teacher conference documents, pre-expulsions, open enrollment transfers, transfer placements, and you can see the list goes on and on, so I'm not going to go through each and every one of those. But what I've looked at is to try to merge both of those and try to house it out of our department.
Okay.
And then finally, the last position, and this would be an increase of hours for our bankers at each of our high schools, Craig High School and Parker High School. We have had part-time bankers at our schools, and that is difficult for our teachers, other people that run those activity accounts, to be able to get to those people in their prep times or planning times or between classes to deliver money to the banker. And their hours are a short amount of time, 5 hours, I believe. So we believe that our high schools are big enough and there's enough action, activity, and money coming through that it would be prudent to add hours to those positions throughout the school year. You can see it's based on a 185-day calendar. So each high school could have a full-time banker.
And I'm assuming because the health and dental, they've pierced the 30-hour
Correct, yeah.
ceiling, so
We would
therefore
offer
now they
benefits.
have the insurance.
They would, yes, if we do
Okay.
that, if we add that. And similar to the other 2 categories, my expectation is simply that these items are moved to the full board, and that they are considered as part of the entire budget.
Okay, and I see the 424, 846.
Is our estimated total.
Yeah, okay. I have a question, but Steve?
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that come up is some of the changes, and I'm not sure how it affect us, but it would financially, and that is overtime. How do we treat our people as professionals, as salaried individuals,
I'll let
based on
HR
the new
answer that
law with
question.
overtime?
Yes, those are the experts on that.
Well,
side.
you have two definitions. You have an exempt employee and a non-exempt employee.
Okay.
And so our exempt employees are just that, their salary, they work until the job is done. Our non-exempt may be entitled to overtime.
So we may see some increase there?
Have seen some increases already for this year with some of the things that we've had to implement.
And part of it is, of course, we have a lot of people doing more jobs than they did before, individuals, or more of a workload. Okay. It's nothing, there won't be any big surprises on it, though, that you anticipate. I don't want to make you lock you down.
Dollar surprises?
Yeah.
I think for any of us sitting here, we have added some dollars into the budget in order to get the work done and job duties done. I don't know if it was a surprise, though.
Well, it would be to us, we put out a budget and then it all of a sudden say, we need another 200,000 or something.
Not significant.
Probably can survive it, but, with
Right.
a $140 million budget, but still, just looking at if you said, well, it really could be really up here, or it should be very low. So that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
From my end, it's been fairly low. I can't speak for other departments.
But no guarantees, correct? I wouldn't pin you to the wall on that. Steve?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Steve, should we just do what we did on the other one, just move forward with this 424? It's the first time we've looked at this, but just move forward with a recommendation to the board to make the final
You're expecting
determination?
approval at the board meeting next week?
No, I expect this to be part of the budget discussion.
Yeah, that'd be fine. You just move that forward.
Next week?
No, as part of the budget
To the-
discussion.
That's
Right,
the
to the full board.
October one. Okay. So, Steve, would you put this into the budget anticipating that it will be positive endorsement?
That was for you, Keith.
I'm
Keith,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Keith.
All right. Didn't hear my name. What was
This is
that?
just part of the full budget
Oh, yes,
discussion.
yes.
Yeah.
So that you just figure just like
Yeah.
that it'll be there and see where it ends up when we get to the final
Sure.
budget.
We can do that.
Okay. So we just recommend it's brought forward for the final budget.
That would be good.
Any contingencies or anything? Okay. That will take care of that. What are we down to?
We are-
Oh, here we go. This is, yes, Dr. Schulte.
Here I am again. Number 9 is adding a new admin reg to the current board policy 7525, naming school district facilities. And I really took some of the work that was already done and just made some adjustments to it. Admin regs, as you already know, do not have to go before the board, but I thought this one probably was critical enough. It would be good to have the full board support on the particular regulation, and I know you've been working on it a long time. So, and this should be in your board packet as well. What you have in front of you, as I'm sure you've already looked at, simply a form that people can utilize and fill out if they have a suggestion of a naming that they would like to participate in for a part of a facility or for an entire facility. And it would come back to the board for board approval of the majority of the board. That's how it's set up now anyway. So any comments or questions about this?
Nope. I suggest we move it to the full board Tuesday.
Okay, we will have some kind of a costing or pricing.
We have, well, I put on the form, that's a good question, Commissioner Damerhausen, at the bottom of page 6. First of all, that there's a 60-day turnaround time, so the applicant can hear back from us, at least where we're at in the process, if not the board vote. But then also the estimated cost to add the name or any fixtures, plaques, whatever the person is thinking, what that estimated cost would be.
Okay,
For that.
that's the cost or expense to us. What I'm looking at, what is the expense to them? What are we saying we need for that? Did we get anything there? Did I miss something?
I don't follow your question.
Well, if somebody says, I want the naming rights to the floor of the gym, how much does that cost them for those naming rights?
Yeah, I think this focuses primarily on the honorariums. In the naming rights, we still have the documentation we've sent out, but that has not been discussed yet and finalized.
So the honorariums are just things that we will say we're honoring someone and that, but we need to be able to recover somehow the cost.
Correct.
Right, and that is written into here, if I'm understanding you correctly. The costs and resources needed to add whatever, the name, the fixtures, the plaques, will need to be addressed by the person or group nominating the individual.
And the maintenance also.
Sure.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah, so if I am going to nominate you and have your name somewhere in the library, let's say, and I want to put up a plaque, then I'm also going to say the alumni will be taking care of the cost or whatever,
Okay,
or
okay.
I'm taking care of the cost.
Or someone.
Yeah,
At
but
least
then
for
the
whatever period.
district, when they respond, will say what the cost will be to actually come up with a plaque if we're going to do that,
Time
or
period.
put it on there.
And the period of time that it would be good for.
I didn't address period of time. I looked at these as being long-lasting.
Usually the honorariums are somewhat permanent, but the sponsorships could be a limited amount of time.
Right.
The people that
Yeah, that's
sponsor
what we
the
saw.
football field may only have the rights for 3
So
years.
eventually, the district may absorb the cost of the maintenance and that because whoever was dropped off.
No, it actually breaks down. For instance, if you were going to pay for the tennis screens on the tennis courts, and they have and you're going to have Dahmerhausen Productions on the screen, then the life expectancy is 5 years. So after 5 years, it's out, or you pay for it again for the next 5 years. So
there is a time frame in there.
But it
Well, in that
varies
sense, yeah.
depending on the item.
Sure,
Sometimes
sure.
it'll vary depending on the item.
And that's what the board hashes out in that.
Well, no, that's what the staff hashes out.
Okay, and
When
then
they-
brings
that's-
forward to the board.
Right, that's another level of this. This is the first step in getting this approved,
Okay,
and then there's more detail that will go as to how to implement each of these steps.
okay.
Would that be accurate, Mr. Pennington?
Well, I do trust staff and your knowledge on the background to carry this forward. I just had some questions I'd like to, ask. And again, I want to eventually get to how we sell naming rights and that, where we can bring in income.
That
And
might be
and
next, after we get this one done.
Well, we have to look at all sources in the future. Nothing can be ignored, and I'm sure we can bring in money by doing that. So, okay. We will bring that forward to the full board. It says action, but all we can do is bring it forward and
For Tuesday next week.
Yeah, and the board could vote on that if they so choose.
right. We're just bringing a recommendation to bring forward to the
Right.
whole board because
Perfect.
we don't have enough people to really vote on it. Okay, we're comfortable there. Okay, the last one, future committee meeting items, and including meeting times and agenda items. I think my first statement would be, do we want to stay on the Tuesday or go back to the Wednesday? And since there's only two of us, what's your thought, Steve?
Either one works.
I'm comfortable either way.
Yeah, so that's fine. If
Oh, I was the one with the conflict, actually, because of the Blackhawk Tech.
Wednesday was
meetings.
not good?
Well, it's the third Wednesday, I think. So it could be on Wednesday, just not the third Wednesday for me.
So why don't we stay on the third Tuesday until something, you can make us aware that it changed, and would we like to go at that point back to a Wednesday?
What time is your board meeting?
4:30.
Okay, well, then we can't squeeze it quite that tight.
It was a little tight.
So-
And I mean, obviously I could leave early, but I do like to be a
No,
part
no,
of this.
we're fine, we'd like to have you here. So we'll continue to meet on Tuesdays, 3:30, at the Educational Services Center, the third Tuesday of each month, unless we need to adjust for whatever reason that may be, and we should be accommodating.
And Deb, could you poll the other two members too and let them know that?
Yeah,
verify
I think that's an excellent idea. Okay, Steve, you got any other ideas? on that?
I've got lots of ideas, but no agenda items.
No agenda items? Seems to me I had one and I forgot it. So therefore, my senior moment has occurred at this moment. It's my own fault. I didn't write it down, and maybe we touched on it and I just didn't realize it as such. I hope that is the case. And I guess I do have a thought that as we go forward, we visit the possibility of how we present items in the future. But I think that's a full discussion, and we tend to, I think, give snippets. And I know we backed away from the big picture years ago because it wasn't a good idea we determined at that time, especially when the budget was in turmoil and everything else a few years ago. And we saw what was happening. But I would like to have that discussion in the future a little more, if there was something we could do to tweak it to help the board members understand it better. Maybe there's nothing, maybe this is the right thing. So if that's okay with anyone, I'd like to just revisit how we present the budget through the year and that. Always should be looking to see if there's a way to make it better. May not be. So, comfortable with that?
I'm not sure what you're suggesting, so.
Well, sometimes we just look at this. If we look at this, we look at that. But sometimes it's better to know. Here's an example. 5-year forecast, department building. It's a little better to know what they were in the past. The
So
budget.
you want more
A little
historical data.
little more information. That's what I'm thinking. But if the rest of the board doesn't, and it's not easy to do, I don't want to create any waves per se.
Well, we would have all prior year budget amounts in the prior year's budget book.
But it'd be nice if we saw it on there, because not everyone. We may have new board members and a variety of other things. And I'll tell you what, it may be a senior moment for me, but I don't remember last year's. And remodeling my office, I can't find all the budgets from previous years, and that's horrible. That's horrible. Well, maybe I'll have more order to it since I expanded the office again. So, are there anything else, Steve, you'd like to bring up?
Nope.
Dr. Schulte, anything you should see we should be adjusting? Keith?
Nope,
We'll
plenty.
just keep going. I will call it. Meeting. Hey, God, did we do good?
Well, there's no contentious.
Well,